Welcome to Soul, Light, and Body. How are you guys doing today?
Just about awake. I'm going to be really honest.
I know, because Paulette, you're joining us all the way from London, and I guess it's past midnight.
10 past midnight. Didn't know there were two 12 o'clocks in one day, but there you are. Apparently there are.
Wow. But it's so good to have you here this evening because we're evening at this end here in the United States. And it's a very interesting topic because a lot of people kind of like really don't know that true essence of the meaning of intuition. Everybody got have their own thoughts about it, and you're here this evening and you're going to bring some form of clarity for us and to help us to understand how we can really use this to our advantage, and we can able to transform our lives if we can only tune into ourselves. And I like to call it the board of directors, because it really helps to sort things out. And many times we have meeting with ourselves.
Very true.
We have these personal meetings with the board of directors, these really, really intense meetings, and sometimes you find that some of the things that are bothering us, we really got to get rid of those stuff because we don't need them on the board of directors, So we got to sort them out and we got to get rid of them. And also, we got to look at our children because we are focusing on them also this evening. And we got to be mindful of how we really talk to our children, because the words that we say to them become their inner voice. And when it becomes their inner voice, they go into adulthood. And that is how come we as adults, we keep running on those paradigms all the time because it's what was being said to us as children. So we're not trusting ourselves. We are trusting those voices. We're not good enough. We're not beautiful. We're not worthy, and because of those things was being said to us, we are running on those patterns on to now. So we really got to shift away from that. But is the shift, Paulette is going to help us to understand how we can make that shift this evening and to really take ourselves and trusting ourselves, because we got to trust ourselves because we are the author of our lives and we have the choices that we can make with our lives. Of course, we went through a lot of stuff, and a lot of people went through a lot of ordeal and trauma and these different kind of experiences that we went through, challenges. But we always have to go to the board of directors and trust the board of directors, because it really helps us to understand who we are. And sitting with yourself is a big one, because many times we can't even sit with ourselves. We can't even have a meeting with ourselves. So we gotta start from there. We gotta sit with ourselves. We gotta have meeting with ourselves. It's okay to have meeting with yourself. It's quite okay, because when we do that, we're able to dive deep within and to understand how we can really trust the inner voice, that is the real inner voice that is speaking to us. So this evening, we're going to really dive deep into this subject, and Paulette is going to give us a little bit of tools that we can add to our toolbox moving forward, and it's going to be able to enhance our lives. I'm Karen Pascal, holistic health and wellness coach, and a co-author of two books with my sister Joan Williams. And those books are on Amazon: Your Gut in You and Self Care is Intentional. So you can go grab a copy, and those books are life changing. They're packed with a lot of stuff inside that's going to help you as an individual to look at the foods that you're eating and how you're really taking care of yourself mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Self-care intentional talks about a lot of stuff that you gotta go within and help yourself. So just go to the links, the comments below. You're gonna find the links, and you can purchase the copies. So they're very reasonable, they're very affordable. But you know what? You really can't look at the price. You gotta look how you could transform your life. So just go grab yourself a copy. Also, Paulette book links, they are in the comments below. You're gonna go grab Paulette books, have a read, and you know what? It's all about connection. It's all about collaborating. It's all about moving forward, and those books can help your kids. So this evening, just grab a pen, a paper, a notepad, and just sit back and just enjoy this 1 hour, because it's going to be very inspirational. It's going to be very informative, and you can able to walk away this evening with a lot of pointers to help yourself and also to help your children so they can trust their inner voice. So I'll now hand the mic over to Miss Joan Williams. Paulette, welcome to Soul Light and Body. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh,
Wow, great opening as always.
Thank you.
Well, the thing is, we have to sit and think about. You call it board of directors. I would say I call it consultant, because when our instinct or our intuition is talking to us, we consult. We try to get some answers. We ask the question, and how do we trust that?
Mhm.
Which Paulette would welcome Paulette, and would give us a full overview. How do we find that level of trust and have that sense of knowing, and let that guide us and lean into that so it can lead us moving forward, whatever that is, whatever that might be. The question tonight I just want to ask everyone who are going to be watching live, and those who on the replay, welcome. And the thing is, what are you carrying around that is not serving you well? What are you holding on to and not letting go that is standing in the way between you and your success? Give it a second thought. Think about that. What are you letting that is not serving you well, and you're holding on to that, and that is standing in the way for you to achieve all your greatness, walking in your excellence, and being the person who you're here in this universe to be? What is that thing or things? What is your self talk? How are you talking to yourself? Because that really matters. It really matters. And are you setting those boundaries? Are you setting those boundaries for yourself so you can have the right kind of well being as a person, that you can show up in this world and live your true essential self? Give it a second thought. How do you show up in a room? How do you show up in a room? Are you able to leave deposits or sprinkle some beautiful fragrance that is left behind, that is impactful, that is strong? That when you leave that room and you leave that environment or you leave that conversation, the person who you spoke with have a lot to move forward with. Because every day we are becoming, and how we show up and what we deposit in others makes a very, very big impact. How are you letting someone feel? Because one of the things, people always remember how you make them feel. So today, give those things a second thought and think about how you are showing up in the world and what impact, what change you're making in this world. Because we all are here to make a difference. And are we serving? One of the things in 2024, commencing in 2024, you try to live more intentionally. Karen and myself, more intentionally. We were in the past, but now we have moved it on a step further, more intentionally, serving more, because it means something. Showing up to soup kitchens, going to shelters, and reminding people that where they are, that is not where they're going to be. Provide hope and optimism. It matters. Because their environment is what will shape your reality. And if you can think forward and forward thinking, and know that where you are in the moment in time, that it might be a low place, but that's not where you're going to be settling. That's not where you're going to be. You can aspire for bigger and greater things and surround yourself with amazing people who can help you to push you forward and instill the level of greatness in you that you can be and live your true essential self. Don't forget to grab our books, Your God in You and Self Care, because nourishing yourself and nurturing yourself is very important. Nourish and nurture goes hand in hand. Because when we nourish ourselves and put in our bodies, help us to be strong and help us to achieve and accomplish our goals. And then nurturing ourselves, facilitating our boundaries, facilitating our emotional, spiritual, that it matters. Our joy, our creativity. So give it a second thought. Think about those things we spoke about. My name is Sharon Williams, holistic health and wellness coach. And we got a great session for you tonight with amazing Paulette. Thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you for being here, because I know you're going to expand our toolbox and you're going to drop great deposits on us tonight so we can move forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm actually going to start with the child so that you can see how your mind develops with the child's mind. So if you imagine when you're little, you don't just think to yourself, I won't ride that bike in case I fall off it. You just ride the bike, right?
Mhm.
You don't automatically assume that you won't get what you ask Father Christmas for. You want it, you expect it, you believe it to be true, and therefore you expect to receive the gift.
Mhm.
These things start to leave very strong patterns in your mind of trust. So you trust not only in what the story is, as in what your parents have told you. Father Christmas brings gifts, therefore blah blah. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, will I fall off my bike? Well, maybe, but what will I do? I'll get straight back on the bike and I'll ride it again. Now, the same with the helter skelter. You see these children coming down these helter skelters on mats, and you think, there's no way I'll do that now. But when you were 6, 7, you were running up and down those stairs, doing it 3, 4, 5 times, right? Because all it was exhilarating and exciting, and it told you that it was fun, right? So the message was that was fun. So these little messages stay in your mind. And as a child, you develop an inner dialogue. And the inner dialogue, most of the time, is entertainment, fun. This is good, this is great, I'm enjoying myself. But what we don't realize is that there is another inner dialogue that's running in the background. And it says, I don't feel comfortable with Uncle Sid. When Mummy leaves with Uncle Sid, I don't feel comfortable. I don't like Uncle Sid. I can't tell you why I don't like him. There's a funny feeling in my tummy. I don't like being in that room with him. That child might not have the ability to actually have that dialogue with their parents, but they will try and do everything they can to avoid being left in that room with Uncle Sid, right? So that's a kind of inner dialogue that you can't verbalize, but it still happens. That's a gut feel. That's a start of your gut feelings. That's the start of that inner conscious feeling where your mind's telling yourself, your conscious mind, your thinking mind is going, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't like it. I don't want to be in that position, right? Now, if you take that even further than that to we're going to move house, for example, parents might be excited about moving house. Parents might be enthused about all the decorating and the complete and utter chaos they're going to live in for the next X number of months or weeks. But little Johnny, who absolutely adored his old bedroom, thinks this is the worst decision that's ever happened on the planet. And nobody consulted them. And there's an example there of the New House Nerves, is a book about exactly that. That thought of, I don't want to move. I liked my old house. I was very comfortable in my old house. So what if I had to share a room? I'd share a room all day long. If it means I don't have to move, I'll never moan again about my brother's smelly, habits or socks or whatever else he used to do to me. But do we have to move? But the rest of the family could be showing all these signs of enthusiasm. Now, this is the first time there's the conflict. This is the parents' inner dialogue, inner thought process. We're moving forward. Every child's going to have their own bedroom. It's going to be great. We're very positive about this move. Everyone's happy. And the child thinking, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. So there's two inner dialogues here. There's one of enthusiasm, which is the parents, and there's one of fear, which is the child. And those two are often in conflict. And the reason they're in conflict is because the parent hasn't actually discussed it with great detail with the child. Because not only are they going to have to change homes, they're going to leave all their friends behind. They're going to have to change schools. They're going to have to do blah and blah and blah. But the parents are super excited because their jobs, the mum is moving to a new job and it's promotion and more money and bigger house, and it's all really exciting. Child terrified. And so many changes for that child are overwhelming. So it's an interesting dilemma here, because if the conversation had happened where you all sat around the table and said, this is why we're moving, this is how we're moving, this is the benefits of moving, and guess what? We'll still see all of your old friends, and guess what? We'll have all your old friends over, and you'll make new friends. Your new friends and your old friends will all be one happy group of friends, and it could all be just great. And you get your own room, and you might even get a telly in your room, and who knows what else you could add to that cherry on the top to make that change feel so much more interesting, so much more part of, so much more of the dialogue. But that's not what happens. Parents have their dialogues, and their inner voices are all really pumped up and enthused. And little Johnny is absolutely in pieces. And I'll give you another example of that. And this is something that parents really, from many, many conversations that I've had, parents don't realize just how much children are listening.
Yes.
True.
So,
True.
True,
all
true,
right.
true.
True.
So, for example, they find out that somebody's got the big C, the big scary C word, right? And that big scary C word they've heard attached to someone. Now, it might not actually be the someone they know, it might be somebody that they work with, that one of the parents work with, but they've got an Auntie Sue and they've heard the word Sue, so they now think Auntie Sue's going to die because she's got cancer. They're in their bedrooms holding onto their knees, crying, sobbing, talking to their inner voice, saying to inner voice, what are we going to do with our Auntie Sue? And what about Auntie Sue's children, their cousins? And what's going to happen? And this is this huge, big dialogue that's going on in the child's voice. And we call it Walter, not for any other reason than we just wanted to give it a name. So if you think about it, Walter's telling Jack, well, look, this is really terrible and this is really sad. But are you sure? Are you sure it's the right Sue? Because the inner voice, the conscious mind is saying, get your facts right, right? But your head's going woo, off 1,000 miles an hour, making all its own decisions. When mummy comes upstairs and sees you crying and all upset and asks you what's the matter, and you say, well, I heard you talking about Auntie Sue and it's terrible and I'm really upset about it. Auntie Sue, why? What's happened to Auntie Sue? What's wrong with Auntie Sue? Well, I know about the C word. I know about it. And I'm like, what C word, And then I heard you and Daddy talking about it. Don't pretend, I know. And then they say, oh, right, now I understand. Right, it's somebody Dad works with was also called Sue. And the good news is she had cancer, but she's got over it. And Dad was telling me that everything is fine. Now, whether that part of the story is true or not is not important to a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old child. What's important is that it isn't their Auntie Sue, right? And that's where we don't understand when we're talking just over the kitchen sink, over the island, whatever, prepping for a meal. Lugs are listening, and they pick up the wrong bits of information. Yeah. I had a friend of mine who phoned me and said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My little child thinks we're getting divorced. And I said, why? Well, they heard us talking about some friends. And I was crying. She was telling me she was crying because she was really upset because there'd been a foursome going out loads of times over the years, grown up together, and now this relationship had come to an end. And she was crying because she was feeling feelings for her friend because she'd had a conversation. Her little girl came in and had been listening about the divorce word, saw her mum with her head in her hands crying at the table, and she sat next to her and rubbed her back and said, it's okay, mummy, I'll come and live with you, I'll look after you. Don't worry if daddy's a swine. Now, swine is quite a swear word for us, but she'd heard her mum say that he was a swine because he'd gone off with the secretary. Well, the thing is, it wasn't her husband. It wasn't her dad that had gone off with the secretary. It was her friend's husband. But she's sitting there using the swine word, rubbing her mum's back, telling her, it doesn't matter if daddy's a swine. I'll look after you, mummy. And then, of course, there's all this tears and tantrum. Dad comes to the table and says, well, thanks very much. Now I'm getting accused of all kinds of stuff. And, he's having to make his peace with his daughter and go, I haven't done anything. It wasn't me. But the situation is this.
Yeah.
The child has already gone 15 leaps
Mm-hmm.
ahead,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They've got this vision of them and their mum living on their own, being poor, not being able to have anything, because she'd heard her mum say it's going to be so difficult for them because they're not going to be able to have like nice holidays anymore because they won't be able to afford it. So she's thinking we're not going to have nice holidays anymore because they won't be able to afford it. So the whole child has gone
Yeah.
from 0 to 100, and it
Mhm.
took the dad, literally going out on daughter-dad dates to be friends again, because
Wow.
she was like a father hater, a dad hater, not just her dad, but all dads, because if that one was like it, what's to say that her dad wasn't going to run off with the secretary? Well, he might not have done now, but he might do, because there's
Yeah.
this element
Yeah.
of doubt, you see. And the inner voice is all the time looking, because it's not developed, because the emotional intelligence hasn't developed where you have the filters, it's still thinking all the time these little messages, and they get into a loop. And once that loop starts, it's like every man's a bad man, every
Mm-hmm.
man's gonna go. And these are the sorts of thoughts, if you're not careful, you
Mm-hmm.
will take into adulthood with you. A
Yeah.
distrust of men, a
Mm-hmm.
distrust of people.
Mhm.
Why would they not stay? Because they never, men don't stay. Yeah, men leave you. Why would you expect them not to? And it's a really interesting thing that
Mm-hmm.
people have no idea that this inner dialogue is going on in children's minds all the
The
time,
Yeah.
time. Yes.
and without the learnings,
Mm-hmm.
without the emotional intelligence, without all the experiences to be able to go, well, that's not right, or that's,
Right.
and so we gave the inner voice, when we wrote our books, the name of Walter. So Jack has a conversation with his Walter, and it's a cuddly toy, and he talks to him about all his problems, and then one day he's talking to him, and Walter answers back. And Walter says, well, what makes you think it's this? And he goes, oh my God, you talk, it's pretty scary. Ah, you know. And actually, he then realizes it's okay. He doesn't mind having these conversations with his toy because it helps him. So, in our first book, which we write about, which is called The Bantler's Breakfast Mystery, this is a bereavement story. And this is a story about a grandmother one morning. Normally, the life and soul of the kitchen is sitting, stirring a coffee cup. And she's been living with them for 7 years. But this is, for some reason, the first time that Jack, at 7, has noticed that she's sitting at the kitchen table quiet. There's no toast popping around her, throwing eggs in the air, singing songs, radio too loud, dancing around the kitchen. She's proper zany, crazy grandmother. Lovely, great, fun character in the book. But this day she's stirring her tea quietly at the table. There's no music, there's no sound. And he's like, what the goodness is going on here? Right? And normally, mum goes nuts if they miss the bus. This day, they missed the bus. And he's thinking, we're in for it. We're all diving in the car. And normally, there's a tussle for the front seat, but today, there's no tussle. He just gets in the back. He doesn't want to fight. He just wants to, to calm it all down. And they get in the car, and he said, What's the matter with the GP? They call a GP. What's the matter with GP? What's the matter with GP? And that's when the mum says it's the anniversary of Grandad Star's death. And so she's just today thinking that little bit more about him. Now, we did it as a retrospective death because that's easier for children to handle than a death of today. Because if we do it as a death of today, that's very real. And that can be, we start to put thoughts in children's minds. So we didn't want to do that. So what we did was we said, okay, if we do it retrospectively, it's much easier for a child to handle. So they sit down and they have a conversation, and the mother says, you know, grandmother's upset, but she'll be okay, but she's going to have a lot of thinking time. So when Jack thinks about her all day at school, all day long is thinking about GP and, you know, how she is and how she's feeling and is she okay and isn't she okay. And then when he gets home, he goes running indoors, and normally she's there with a juice and a cookie. No juice, no cookie. Where's GP? And he looks and he can just see through the window. She's sitting on the bench that Grandad Star made. And she's sitting there stroking the cat that Grandad Star made. And he's thinking, oh my goodness, she's still like this. What am I going to do? So he runs upstairs to find water. And they sit on the bed and they try and have a plan. And this is where the inner voice really is explained. Because he says to Walter, shall we throw a party? Because that always cheers me up. And then Walter goes, not really sure a party is the right thing to do. So it's this kind of like conscious, subconscious mind, right? And then he says, how about we just like make a carpet picnic? I love a carpet picnic. She'd love a carpet picnic. And then Walter says, no, I really don't think that's ideal either. I don't think a carpet picnic's the answer. So there's this constant dialogue going on between the two characters. And eventually, Walter says to Jack, what do you do when you're feeling really unhappy and worried? And he says, I talk to GP. So he says, well, why don't we go down and talk to GP? So he said, you know what they say? A problem halved is a problem shared. Problem shared is a problem halved. That's GP's favourite saying. So they go downstairs with Walter, and he sits by her, and then eventually finds himself with a head in her lap, and he's got Walter with him, and Walter's arms stretch out, not quite big enough to go around GP, but he stretches him around as far as he can, and he gives a cuddle to GP, and he says, will you tell me about Grandad Star? And then she starts to talk about all the memories of Grandad Star. And she talks about how he loved golf and how he loved loved fishing and all these things. And it's really helpful because it really breaks down the ice. And then Jack runs upstairs to go and get his homework done. And he's upstairs and he says to Walter, think about all the games of golf I could have played with Grandad Star, and he'd have shown me how to fish. And so now he's having retrospective thoughts about sadness of missing somebody who he'd never even known, because he was only one when his granddad died. He's only ever known GP and a star. That's been what's on his family tree. And he's very happy with the North Star being Granddad Star. So for him, he's suddenly like, well, I missed out on all these things, you know, it's sad. So his inner voice is talking about retrospective things now. And then when he comes downstairs and they all have this huge big fish and chip dinner, because that was Grandad Star's favourite, and they all end up having this cheers with a chip and these horrible peas we have over here called mushy peas. I don't know if you have them in America, but everybody sort of thinks they're the worst thing that came out of the planet. But they're in a little styrofoam tub on the front of because they were Grandad Star's favourite. So they're on the table, right? But everybody ends up having a cheers with a chip to Grandad Star. So you end the story having taken them on a journey of dealing with death, but dealing with it in a really gentle way, but
Yeah.
still all the emotions, all the thought processes. And what we want to try and do is get adults to realize that that inner voice, the board meeting, the consultant, the inner dialogue that we have. I mean, I always say, just if you see me talking to myself, just walk past. I'm having a
True.
team meeting.
True.
That's what
True.
I say.
True.
I say
True.
I'm having a team meeting. Don't mind me.
True.
Just walk past. That's my saying, and I do it a lot. But the thing is, it's important to me because I have to reason with myself,
Yes.
because
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I'm one of those people that will rush off and do something. I'm like, I've got an idea. And the next thing you know is the furniture's coming through the front door. And my husband says, "Did you measure to see if it will fit?" And I go, "Why are you always the voice of reason? Why do you always have to, why do you always have to stamp on my plans, But the voice of reason in my mind was, it's a great idea and we're going with it, right? I had a conversation. I like my idea, so I went with it.
True.
Um, there's a sensible side to this argument, which is that whenever there is a big decision to be made, you need to come to terms with it yourself and
Yes.
then come to terms with it with someone else. You
Right.
shouldn't just rush in. So let's just say someone's done something to you at work and they've really upset you. They might not even know they've upset you, but they have. You've gone away with this little tiny thing that happened at work. That person has forgotten about it.
Right.
That person said it, didn't think they'd said it completely rudely or whatever, and have walked away. Now you went and sat back, got on with your work, but all the time it was going on a loop. How dare they? How dare she say that to me? What does she mean I look like I've put on a few pounds? What does she mean? What does she mean by that? All these thoughts. And then the next conversation is when you get home, you tell your husband. Now, we have a habit as humans, we can't help ourselves. We add bits, right? The story's not juicy enough that she said you put on a few pounds. It's now a few stone, right? She implied that I'd put on a few stone. That haircut didn't do much for your face. Looks like you've put on a few pounds. No, no. Now she said you're so fat, gross, overweight, 2 stone heavier than you were last time she met you. And what on earth have you been doing to yourself? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You've let yourself go. Right? Now, let's just say in your mind's eye that you think maybe I have had a few too many cakes. Just let's say you had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you've got this picture of this mountain of cakes, the size of Mount Everest, right? Iced buns, the chocolate eclairs, they're all on there, right? And in their mind, that's what they've eaten, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that woman had the audacity to say that I'd eaten pile of cake, right? And your poor husband is standing there going, well, trying to say the right thing but scared, right? You know the famous saying, does my bum look big in this? Nobody wants to answer that question, right? Nobody. No man on this planet ever wants to be asked that question or answer that question, because whatever they say, they're wrong, right? If he says, oh, your booty looks good in that, you go, what do you mean my booty looks good in that? Do you mean it's tight? Do you mean it's, he can't do right for doing wrong.
Yeah.
Now, when the husband says, well, you're normally really good friends with her, don't you try and reason with me. Don't you try and reason with my mind. My mind's made up what she said. And then he says, but you used to be really good friends with her. I can't believe that this is going on. This is crazy. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, 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 no. That's it. I'm done. We're finished. I will never speak to her again. That's it. She's not coming to my party. I'm taking the invitation back. The whole thing's got like out of all proportion.
Yeah.
And how many times do things like this happen? And it
Yeah.
happens all the
That's so
time.
true.
And
Mm-hmm.
then what all it means is that you have a little inner niggle about your weight, all right? And that's your Achilles. And what happens is they just went "Eek," and they poked it, right?
Yeah.
We say you poked the bear, right?
Yes.
She poked the bear, and the bear bit. And the
Yeah.
problem is now nobody can tell you that wasn't what she was trying to do, because she's a
Yeah.
nasty, vindictive what's it, who, and yet she's been your best friend all through work. But nope, now she's this evil, vindictive person who said this terrible thing to you and walked away and just left it, just left it floating in the ether. But you've got to go into work the next day. And the question is, how do you deal with it? And
Yeah.
your husband just says to you, why don't you just have a quiet word and say, you
Right.
know what you said, it really it hurt a little bit, and see what she says. If she says something that doesn't agree with you, or you're still angry or upset, then you've got every right to fall out. But
Right.
why don't you just have that little conversation?
You're right.
They go into work the next day, and the first thing she says is, "Oh, you look gorgeous in that dress. Love that. Is that a new dress? I like you in that dress." She says, "Does it make me look slimmer? Yeah, does it? Like this?" You can imagine it, can't you? Right? And the person's like, "Well, you do look slim in that dress, yeah. Because yesterday you mentioned that I might have put on a few pounds. Did I? Yeah, you said when I wear my hair like that, it doesn't really suit me because it makes my face look fuller. I didn't mean you put on a few pounds. I just meant that when you wear your hair up, your face looks thinner. That was all. I didn't mean anything, but oh my goodness, I didn't upset you, did I? Oh, I hope I didn't upset you. Oh, terrible. But no, that'll be the last thing I'd want to do. Anyway, you look gorgeous today. And you're like, hmm. She went home and thought this through, and all she wants to do now is get back in my good books, right? So your inner dialogue is still active,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Don't you think you can crawl back in here because you want to? So the way the story plays out is
Yeah.
hopefully over the course of the days, you work out that actually your
Right.
inner voice was so off center. Yeah. But it has
Mm-hmm.
to learn that. And then when you've done that once, the next time someone says something, you say, sorry, what did you mean by that?
Right.
You
Right.
deal with it then. You stop yourself and you deal with
Mm-hmm.
it. And you say, what did you mean by that? That came over a bit harsh. Have I done
Right.
something to upset you?
Mm-hmm.
You'll be far more likely to nip it in
True.
the bud,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll be thinking to yourself, I don't want to go through another experience like the
Right.
last time, right? Now, with a child, what a child does is it has no idea about working out reason. It just adds.
Right.
So it takes a big difference from a child's mind, where they're
Right.
learning how to handle emotions, learning how to
Mm-hmm.
handle the way things are said to them. So
Mm-hmm.
if a child is being bullied, there's no seat on the bus, and yet there's 20 seats on the bus. But every time the child goes to sit down, the bully goes and sits in that space and says it's taken,
Yes.
right? That child becomes fearful of the boss. And unless they have a relationship at home where they're in a place where they can say, Mum, Dad, or Mum or Dad, I've got a problem with the guy on the bus. It's causing me a problem, blah, blah, blah. Now, the reason Jack and Water came about was because my nephew's name is Jack, and Jack was being bullied on a bus.
Oh.
And I did a doodle on a napkin because I'd gone over for tea, and he put a glass of water like this on the top of it on the napkin, and it put a watermark around the picture. And he said, oh, it's got a watermark. So we said, oh, perhaps we should call him Water. And that's how Water was born.
Oh.
And then he
Wow.
folded the napkin up And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to take this with me to school tomorrow and put it in my blazer pocket. And I was like, why? He said, because when it's with me, I'll be able to think about you, and I will feel stronger.
Wow.
I'll touch it and I'll feel stronger. So in the back of our books, we have a water card, and the water card is completely free. You can download it off of the internet, or you can, I'll just show you it. So you can download it off the internet. You can take it straight off
Wow.
our website, and every child can colour it in, and it can be a Barbie water or a football team water. It's your
Wow.
water, and then you can put that in your pocket. And I had one school teacher told me, headmaster, he did over 200 of them, and he had 4 teachers standing at each door as they left the assembly hall, and every child was given an A4 printout, and the next lesson they were given to colour it in, because they were so taken with the assembly that I'd given them that they wanted every child to have one. And
Wow.
it's very empowering to think that you've had that kind of effect.
Yeah.
But during after COVID, parents were coming up with the most innovative ways of people knowing. For example, I had one friend said to me that their son was wearing their dad's socks. Now, their child had fairly small feet, so they're wearing socks that were too big for them, but they felt happier wearing their dad's socks because it made them reminded them of home.
Yeah.
Another friend kissed with, the stain lipstick, their hand of their daughter, and every time their daughter was upset, they kissed their hand, and that was a mum kiss, and the kiss had 100 kisses in that kiss, so it
Wow.
never ran out. So the water card for me was a no-brainer. It meant that if that did that for Jack, just touching something, just a touch point that says, this makes me feel safer, this makes me feel more like I can cope, then it's worth it to have that for him.
Yeah.
So every child for me deserves that. And people have said, why have you not made a water, a toy? And it's because some children, some families will be able to afford to buy them and others won't. So I would rather that everyone just has a water card, and then everyone's equal. No one has, and no one, my water's better than your water. No, it's just a card, and everyone is the same. And then if I could give an adult a water card, what I would do with them is I would sit every adult down in this world, and I would say to them 2 or 3 things. The first one would always be, listen to what you say in front of other children or
Yeah.
other people. Number one, most important thing, there are always ears listening, and even grown-up ears, right? You never know who's just about to walk in the kitchen when you're slagging somebody off, right? You never know. So you have to be thinking these things through. If you're about to give somebody a hard time, make sure it's in privacy. Number two, I think that it would be really important if a child or a parent has a conversation about what goes on with other families is their business, and what goes on with you and your family is your business. Does that make sense? It's
Yes.
so different. It doesn't always apply, you know? I remember my little boy coming home and saying, why don't we go to church every Sunday? And I said, well, that's because we live in a village and we don't have a church service every Sunday. We have a church service once a month. Oh, well, is there no other churches? And I was like, well, that's a good point. We don't actually look for other churches. We just wait for our one, and and that's how it works. It's once a month, and that's how it works. So so Ben went to school, and he told them that we only have a church service once a month, so we only go to church once a month. And this teacher, who was very religious, sent him home with a piece of paper with all these different services on that we could possibly attend. That didn't go down too well. But what do you say, you see? You know? There are so many times that children are so innocent.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend who's a teacher. And he told me off. He said, "You're not getting any questions in." He said, "Shut up." I thank you, Annie, for that. My lovely friend Annie.
Yeah, we love Annie.
Yeah, I don't, not right now. My inner voice is telling Annie to do something, but I shan't tell you what it is. So the thing about one of my friends, she said to me, she's a teacher. She said, "I've got a really difficult situation." I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, during show and tell, we talk about something that happened at the weekend, and this little boy said his daddy dressed up as a lady." Absolutely fine, no problem with that. First time ever. It's like, okay, so it might not be the first time ever that it happened, but it was the first time ever that he'd seen it. They were going to a party. She was dressed as a man, he was dressed as a woman, and it was called a tarts and tramps party. So she was dressed as a trampy man, and he was dressed as a tarty lady with big red lipstick on. Anyway, he's told everybody at show and tell that his daddy dressed up in his mummy's dress and with lipstick and everything, right? She's she's got to face these two people at parents' evening, and she doesn't know whether she's going to be able to sit there with a straight face, but because she doesn't know what she's supposed to know, right? So she starts the conversation as everybody does, nice and easy, you know, gently, and then the last thing she says, "There is something that I would just like you just like to mention. During show and tell, your son might have mentioned that, you know, that maybe that you like to dress up as a lady," which is absolutely fine. But I just wanted you to know that he told the whole class and me, so the whole class knows, and obviously I do. So I just really felt obliged to let you know. And of course, this hilarious situation. "Oh, it was a party we went to." She said, "You don't have to make excuses. It's fine. What you do is your bit." He said, "No, no, no. Let me defend myself." This fella felt like he was like being accused of something. It's like, there's no accusations. I just want you to know what has happened. You know. But these are the situations that
Yeah.
where you don't understand what children repeat, what children
Yes.
say, what what goes on in their minds, what damage gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember Kelly Clarkson. I read an interview with her, and she talked about her dad leaving them when she was 6 years old, and he walked away. And she wrote a song about it, and it's a really moving song. And she said, you know, what did I do wrong? You know, how did I make this happen? Is
Listen
that
what Lisa
any?
is saying.
Hang on, it was. I love these people. These are my friends,
I
honestly.
Yes.
know.
Yes. Yes.
So proud of Paulette. Way past her bedtime and Cinderella slippers still on. No pumpkins yet.
Lisa, you devil. Um, and there's any telling me to shut up. I'm not right across the top of the screen. Give the girls a chance to speak. I'll tell you honestly. But the thing about all of these little stories are
Yeah.
people will resonate with them, and
Yes.
people will remember these situations where they
Yes.
will say, "Do you know what? I remember that situation when that happened to
Mhm.
me."
Yeah.
Or, for example, I keep hearing the word layoffs, right? Everyone's talking about layoffs. Could you imagine being a child in a house with all this talk about layoffs and layoffs and layoffs? That will be going round in a loop in a child's
Mhm.
mind, as
Mhm.
well as going round in a loop in the parent's mind. So you've got a hotbed of chaos about to ensue when actually it might not even happen, right?
Yeah.
True.
Exactly.
It's just a conversation at the moment, but it's going round because if we have to, what happens if we have to, what happens? Oh,
Right.
maybe we won't have a holiday. Maybe we won't be able to do this. Maybe I won't. Dare I even ask to go on the school trip? Because if we're having a layoff, they won't be able to afford it. So you don't
Mhm.
know what is going on in their inner voice
Right.
in the same way that your own inner voice is having its own dialogue. So I think that's the kind of thing that I would love for everybody to have a thought
Mhm.
about not only what they say out loud, because that has an effect on the
Mhm.
people that are listening.
True.
And then they go to bed. Let's just say an argument. Two parents have an argument, right? And they go off to bed in a huff. The next morning, they might still not be talking. And there's a bit of a tiff over the toaster. And there's another tiff over who's making a cup of tea. And the child's going, oh no, they're going to get divorced. Because in a child's mind, as soon as your
Mhm.
parents stop talking, and and actually it might be over something like somebody orders some furniture that doesn't fit. It could be something quite simple,
Yes.
like
Mhm.
somebody orders something without checking whether the measurements are right first,
Mhm.
and he may have gone to bed with a hump, and that was what caused the argument. But you don't realize it. And I just think that that's the inner voice. The inner voice is keeping you safe and keeping you out of trouble. And now I'm
Yes.
going to let you ask some questions before Emmy tells me off.
My question to you, Paulette. Oh my goodness, there are some beautiful stories that you share, but these stories got a lot of meaning. And it's helping the listeners to understand that it all starts with our children. And when we are in a room with our children, and when you think they're listening to every word that you speak. So when we are at home, we have to be so mindful of our children because they will run that inner voice and then they believe it's true. And
Yep.
then they go into adulthood with that same inner voice and it keep playing out their whole lifetime. So we have to be so mindful when we're at home and when we are having conversations around a table or we having conversation in the kitchen and you think the kids are in the bedroom, they're sleeping. We have to be so mindful. We have to be so mindful what we are saying and what we are doing because they emulate us. They look at us and whatever we do, they do. Because the first thing they say, oh, mommy and daddy used to do it, so I can
Mhm.
do it. You know. So you have to be so mindful.
That
Paulette,
and that behavior as well, that's an interesting thing as well. If you have a very volatile household,
Mm.
that's the child that comes into school and is generally quite volatile. If you have a shouty household, there's like say there's 5 or 6 kids, and you have to shout loud to get heard, right? And you have to be quick with your hand to get the cake because there's only so many, right? That's the child that is quite snatchy at the table at school and looks like
Yeah.
somebody who's not very pleasant, but actually is super pleasant, but knows that they've got to get in quick. Yeah.
yeah,
And they're shouty because that's just a shouty environment. And if you've come from a quiet environment, that you might be a bit wary of that person. and they're a perfectly lovely, normal person,
Right.
but they give off a different vibe,
Yes.
you know? That's the other one.
And it all stemmed from the environment that they came from.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
all stemmed from the
Yeah.
environment. Yeah. And
Right.
and
Uh,
those things go right into adulthood because we bring it along with us into adulthood.
Right. Because
Tom
that
was
is
a
why it
snatcher.
says that your environment shape you, who
Yes,
you are.
definitely.
So it's
Definitely.
being like ingrained in you. So what happened in your environment moves you forward to whoever you become as your adulthood. Someone
Mm.
on the other side may want to know why you behaving this way, but it's what you've been, your environment. It shape you, who you become. Now, could someone modify that behavioral pattern, even though they may
Yeah.
coming from somewhere, like when you spoke about people being snatchy or whatever it is? Can you modify that? Can you change that as you become older and you realize that this is not who I want to be? How does one do that?
I think what happens is as you become emotionally more intelligent,
Hmm.
you understand that there are choices.
Okay.
Yeah. And you look at other people and then you emulate other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that um, you aren't going to change, but
Right.
9 times out of 10 you will, because if
Mm-hmm.
you're with like-minded people,
Mm-hmm.
and if everyone isn't snatching the cake, then the chances are there's enough cakes.
Right.
You know, I mean, my mum had a way of making us share, and she used to make us cut an apple, and then the other person got to choose,
Right.
and we could cut an apple in
Yeah.
half by
Yeah.
almost a millimeter. You know, because you knew the other person was going to choose. If they
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to choose, you'd give them the thin bit and keep the big bit. But because you knew they got the choice, you'd be
Yeah.
like straight down the line. You know, absolutely perfect. Cut- that
Yeah.
could be my
Yeah.
special skill. But the thing that I'm trying to say is they are behaviours that you carry forward.
Mm-hmm.
Another example of that is alcohol. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a family that drinks alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you're a bad family,
Right.
just means you've got alcohol around, okay? If you
Mhm.
see alcohol and there's alcohol about, it doesn't mean you're fearful of it, it doesn't mean you're frightened of it, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with having alcohol in the house. But what does happen is this: if you've never seen alcohol and you turn up at college and you're allowed to suddenly drink, what's the chances of the
Mm-hmm.
person who's always seen alcohol around and
Right.
not bothered by it, and the person who's never seen alcohol behind before is
Yeah.
far more likely to be
Right.
the one
Mm-hmm.
that heads towards party time, you
Yeah.
know? So it's about also making sure that you give everybody the best possible chance
Mm-hmm.
to have a really good, solid upbringing,
Yeah.
but with also understanding that you are um, giving that child the chance to see all things. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I always say to my child, my son is not a child anymore, he's 21 in September. You know, I say to him all the time, don't judge everybody, don't judge a book by its cover,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yes.
say just because of X don't doesn't mean da 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 da, you know? And we've always had to be very, very mindful with
Yeah.
Ben, because when he was
Mm-hmm.
really little, he would repeat things, and I mean, like, for
Yeah.
example, he was
Mm-hmm.
really rubbish at sharing because he was an only child. So
Right.
he didn't really have to do a lot of sharing. And the nursery said to us, the kindergarten, you'd call it, said to us, he's not very good at sharing. So we were like, okay. So the next day we had all the toys around and us, and then we played a game, and everybody had a go, and it was Big Ted's turn, and then it was Little Ted's turn, and then it was Dad's turn, my turn, Ben's turn, and round it went, and we learnt how to share. Then he became the sharing police. He was the sharing police. Like, anybody who wasn't sharing properly, oh my goodness, they got read the riot act. Don't you know what sharing is? Sharing is this, that. And you're like, what have I created? I've created a monster, but it just means that those children are going to take everything very literally. And that was how he was. We said to him one day, you can't have a second cake, because if you have a second cake, then you're going to put on weight and then you won't be happy. So you don't want to do that, do you? No, I don't want to do that. No, it's right. You're right. I want to be healthy. So he had been learning about being healthy at school, and we had to have lots of vegetables, and every day we'd look at the vegetables, count them. And at the time it was 5 a day, right? So we used to count how many vegetables we'd had. And then it got to the stage where we couldn't get him off the toilet. And I was like, what have I done to my poor kid, so ill. So we ended up going to a hospital. So it was like, he's always got this toilet issue and da 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 da. And they were like, can you tell us what he has for breakfast? So there's blueberries and banana, and then he has a fruit juice, and then he has his meal at school, and then he comes home and he has a meal. But there's always 5 vegetables on the plate, because of the 5 a day rule. And he's like, if you work it out, he's probably having more like 8 or 9 fruit and vegetable a day. And then at school he's eating fruit and vegetables as well. It's more like 10 or 11. So the guy was like, maybe he's got like an issue, he's allergic or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Anyway, so I'll take him into hospital and we'll give him a chalk diet and then introduce food. I said, okay, fine. I said, but he's going to Italy next week skiing. So I said, will it be all right if we do it the week after? Yep, no problem. He goes skiing for a week, eats nothing but pasta and pizza, hasn't been near any fruit or vegetables at all. And guess what? Hasn't got a problem anymore. So you know what the doctor said to me? He's fructose intolerant. What does that mean? You're giving him too many fruit and vegetables. Too many fruit and vegetables, because he was counting them. I had to keep up with the counting all the time. You see, that's the message from school. You've got to have so many. This little girl, who was rather chunky, is about to have her second cake. Ben steps up and says, I don't think you should have that cake, because you don't really need it, do you? So she burst into tears, went and told the teacher that Ben had been mean to her. Ben was upset, got told off. And he said, but I was only telling her that she needs to be healthy. And we've been learning about this in school. And it's like, oh. So when he came home, he said, what do I do to make it right? I said, well, make her a card and you can write you're sorry in the card.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to do. Is just say you're sorry. I said, but I had to go through the whole explanation that it's not his job, just like it's not his job to tell people what's right and wrong with sharing. It's not his job. So, you're not the fruit police, you're not the food police, you're not the sharing police. It's not your job. But that's parenting, and everybody parents differently. Every child is different.
Yeah.
But it all goes back to this inner voice.
Yeah.
His inner voice was telling him that he knows best, because she shouldn't have that extra cake, because they've learned in school about it's not healthy. So healthy choices. He was trying to be helpful, but it backfired. But the point is, that's another example of how we don't really understand, even as teachers, what the kids are learning, what they're actually taking home.
Yeah.
I wish I had a parent to tell me to shut my... Oh dear, better not read that one. I was talking out of turn, says Tom. I love this, Tom. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Oh my goodness, Paulette, what really got you on this path?
I think I've always had a very very clear path myself
Mhm.
from a young child. I had a very tumultuous childhood, very difficult childhood, and I think having had that, um, I knew right from wrong.
Mhm.
I knew I have like sort of had a moral compass, if you like, and that moral compass was my inner voice,
Mhm.
always telling me what was right and what was wrong, and keeping me very straight.
Right.
And I think because I grew up like that, and I never wanted to be in trouble. I never got a detention. I never got in trouble about anything. The only time I ever got into trouble was when a teacher told me that because you come from a difficult home, you don't have to do your homework. And I was really upset because I wanted to do my homework. And he was basically giving me a right, but like a free pass, right? But it wasn't, it's not meant to be a free pass. It was
Right.
meant to be a sympathy thing, you
Mhm.
know? Oh, you're coming from a difficult time, here's a free pass. And I didn't want a free pass. And
Right.
when someone said to me, you'll never come to anything because of your background, that
Mhm.
was my determination to become something.
Right.
So I've always been very strong-willed,
Mhm.
um, strong-willed and with a moral compass. I think that's what made me me. And
Mhm.
then with Ben being autistic, it meant I had to learn a very different way of thinking, a very
Mhm.
different way of speaking, a very direct way of um, directing him, if you like.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I had to do so much work. I must have read 100 books. I did so many courses. And when I eventually retired, it was like I've got all these qualifications that I've
Right.
learned, and I might as well use them. Why
Mhm.
not? So then I qualified as a counselor, but because we were lucky and we were in a position where we didn't necessarily say, right, we need to charge children for coming to see me because some families can't afford it.
Right.
So
Right.
let's just offer that service. I had a revolving door. And that's when you go, hang on a minute, I'm going to end up needing help if this
Mhm.
carries on. So this isn't going to work. So then I thought, right, I'll go into schools. So I went into schools as Mrs. Worry, and I used to wear a funny old hat and like a flasher Mac, but not for flashing, but like an old Mac. And I had a basket of worries, and children were allowed to write a worry and put it in my basket and get rid of it. So
Wow.
Ah,
it was a way of them getting rid of worries out of their minds. And I
wow.
used to talk about their inner voice. And I used to say to them, when you have things going on in your mind, it's so much nicer if you can
Wow.
get rid of it. And it was great. And that's what the assembly started doing. But then it started to be, can you come to Scotland? Can you come to Wales? Can you come and do it? And I was like, hang on a minute, I'm disabled. I can't start running around the world. So I decided that the way to get to as many children and parents, because the thing about my books is, I think that when the parents read the books to the children, they are going to open their minds
Right.
to exactly what the inner voice is. And then they too are going to pick up so much from the books because I've already been told that. I've been told it by teachers, by parents, by therapists that we all learn. It's a good reminder.
Right.
So I think that's where the book stems from, making sure we get the message out without
Mhm.
having to kill myself running
Right.
around the world trying to deliver the message. I don't speak at conferences, although I've been asked to. I've been asked to do public speaking events. I haven't done any. The nearest I've come is on here and getting to know any and the LinkedIn audio groups and all of that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And that's been a whole, ride in itself, and great fun. And I've made some amazing friends from all over the world, and they're all so encouraging, and so supportive. So I guess that's me. That's me in a nutshell, really. I think I've always known right from wrong, and I've always known that I wanted to stay on that straight road,
Yeah.
and I wanted to give myself security. I always knew that. I always knew that I didn't want anyone to be able to take away
Mm-hmm.
everything ever again,
Right.
because having everything taken away makes you very vulnerable.
Gone.
So
Yeah.
I was very, very determined that wasn't going to happen. And I think, like you said, can you change? One of your questions, Karen, was, can you change?
Mm-hmm.
There's an example. Yes, you can. Because
Mm-hmm.
I came from tumultuous, screaming, shouting, fighting parents, going into care, going from care into foster care, and then going into a wonderful marriage and being incredibly happy and not allowing anything to mess that up and to stay strong and solid, and that shows you how you can change.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a product of, just because every generation before you might have been unemployed doesn't mean you have to be
Mm-hmm.
the one that's unemployed. You can break that cycle and
Mm-hmm.
say, no, actually, I'm going to go and get a job. You
Mm-hmm.
can change
Yeah.
if you choose to. But if the whole family are saying,
Mm-hmm.
don't, why would you? Then the pressure is on them not to. But I believe that everybody's got self will, and I believe that that inner voice is always telling you to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even when a child does something wrong in the street, they know they've done something wrong. They
Yeah.
know. When an adult does something, when the adult steals something, they know they shouldn't have stolen it.
Right.
Don't tell me they didn't know. Of course they knew, but it was worth the risk. They
Mm-hmm.
did a quick evaluation. If I take it and get away with it, great. If I take it and get caught, I could be in trouble. Oh well, I'll take it. So they make that judgment all the time. That's the inner voice talking. And the inner voice might be going, I don't fancy your chances. And
Mm-hmm.
it got overwritten with that. Well, I'm gonna go for it and take my chances. But I honestly believe that we're all given that inner voice, that inner strength to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we don't listen.
Wow.
Well said, Paulette. Well said, because many times we don't listen, you know. And before we wrap things up, how can someone know and differentiate which inner voice is the right voice?
I think that's very easy, because I think the inner voice is always, if you think subconscious, conscious
Mm-hmm.
mind, yeah. If you think of the subconscious mind, that's the mind that's always all the history. You're not good enough. You're never going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to do that. All the negative self talk, all the stuff that you've heard ever since you were X big, that you're no good. You're not this. You're not the other. Right? That's all that negative talk is sitting in the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is sitting there going, "We know better than that, don't we? We know
Mm-hmm.
we've got a chance here. Why don't we go for it?" There's a very clear distinction
Mm-hmm.
between all those negative thoughts and somebody, a stronger voice saying, well, why don't we try?
Right.
And I think the argument that we have is, it's so much easier to say, well, it wasn't my fault. I
Mm-hmm.
was I was listening to all the inner dialogue, you know? And I also would say something else as well. If you wouldn't talk to your friend like it, like it,
True. True.
yeah? Talk to
True.
yourself like you would talk to a friend. So in the same way, if you're having one of these conversations that's quite mean to yourself, quite cruel, and you're just saying to yourself really bad stuff, you've got to say to yourself, no, actually, I'm not going to listen to that anymore. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to come from this side and listen to my
Right.
conscious mind and go, no, I'm not going to listen to that negative thought. I know I'm right. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make the decision and do it, you know? And I do believe there is a very clear distinction. And if you really think about it, you know that. You really do know that. But it's sometimes easier to blame the other mind.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's easier to blame it all on, well, you know what happened? You know, that was my history. That was the world I came from. That was my life. That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you know, that's the background. Da, 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 da. You know, it's very easy to blame other situations than to turn around and say it was a fight, but I won. You
Yeah.
know, and I think right is always the path that you know, but there's all this negative self-talk that is the one that argues with you. And
Right.
that's this, you know, we talked about me having a team meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's the team meeting. And
Right.
that's, you know, where you are arguing with yourself saying, well, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I quite fancy that. So what if it doesn't fit? We'll shove it
Mm-hmm.
in. We'll take the door off. We'll get it in somehow, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Compromise, take the door off, you know, be
Mm-hmm.
reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a definite distinctive ability to make the right choices. But I think it is one of those things that's easier sometimes to play the game where you blame, you know, well, that's how it was at home. That's what it was
Yeah.
like,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and that's quite sad and quite problematic because that means you've got a lot of work to do trying to put
True.
it right.
True. True.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Paulette, what's next for Paulette?
What's next for Paulette? Well, book 3. So the next book is New School.
Mm.
So we've done New Home, but we started with bereavement because there were so many young children had lost grandparents and older relatives. So that's why we released that book first, because everyone was saying there was such a need for counselling and there wasn't the facility. So this person is Tom, is very naughty. He is. You're going on Santa's naughty list, Tom. I'm telling you. You tell him from me. You're on the naughty list, on the naughty step even. Um, so what I would say is that the next book really is, so we've done the new house. Now he's got to start the new school.
Mm.
And
Ah.
it's all that, will I make friends? Will people like me? What
Wow.
if he's got all these friends at his old school? How will it compare? And so it's all the things that go on when you start new school and all the fears that you're going to have. And there's lots of twists and turns in the story. But one of my favourite things that we did was he reaches in his pocket to find his water card.
Ah.
And when he reaches in, there's 2. And he thinks, but I've only got
Wow.
1 water card. And he looks in his pocket and there's a bit of paper and he pulls it out. And there's a message from his best friend at his old school telling him that he really enjoys new school. Please don't forget me because we're always going to be best friends. But I hope you enjoy your new school. And that is sufficient to give
Yeah.
him the strength to go back in. And he gets his favourite quiz out, doesn't realise he's sitting on a thing called the friendship bench. And a child comes along and plonks a bum next to him and says, hello, my name's, and off the story goes. And friendship develops from there. And so he puts his letter back in his pocket. So it just shows you how, again, we're always playing with the mind, but we're playing
Yeah.
with the mind in a really positive way,
Yes.
reinforcing
Beautiful.
that he hasn't lost his old friend. His old friend will always be there, and they're going to still see each other all the time. And but don't get a new best friend because I'm your best friend. You know, I love that idea of just put him an extra angle in it because he's going to be a bit nervous in case he's going to find a better friend than him, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what's the next is the new book, which hopefully will get out. I'm thinking sort of September, October time, ready for the new school.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah.
so that we're ready for people going to start the new school, and there'll be the new school book ready for them to start. So we've
Wow.
got a lot of work to
Amazing.
do, but we're on it. So yeah.
Wow. Truly, truly
Wow.
amazing, Paulette. Just listening to you, oh my goodness. Just listening to you, it's fun. It's so much of fun. You make this podcast this evening so much of fun, and the viewers enjoy these beautiful stories you're sharing.
Well, I'm especially Tom, naughty Tom, naughty Tom's having a lovely time.
These beautiful stories that you share with us this evening, but they have deep meaning. And I like the way you deliver. It's meaningful, but it could be very you took us on a journey whereby it's fun, but it's very deep meaning in what we
Yes,
are doing as parents around our children. And it's the same thing at home. We have to be mindful, but we could make things fun. Sometimes you find that our children may make a mistake, and instead of harsh criticism, we can speak to them in a very fun and loving way, helping them to understand, something is something wrong that you've done, and just speak to them in a loving way so they can walk through life understanding, if I make a mistake, I can love myself, I can speak to myself in a loving way, because it all starts from home. And
yes,
I really like how you touched on children first, because it all starts with us as children. And that is what we bring into our adulthood. That unto today, many people are adults are suffering so much because of their childhood.
mm,
So now we have the chance now that we can help these kids, so we can have a great generation going forward. And
absolutely.
you touched on a lot of subject this evening, and I hope the audience was taking notes. And if you joined us late, you really got to watch this replay. It's worthwhile watching this replay, because Paulette gave us so much of pointers how we can start to work on ourselves, and we can make that change. Because she even gave herself as an example from the parenting that she came from, that she was able to make that change in her life. And now she is able now to write 3 books to help our future generation, how they can really parents could help kids to correct themselves as they're going along life's journey. Paulette, thank you so much for really leaning into your purpose, because you're helping so many families around the world who purchased your book, listen to your story. You're helping so many families around the world to make that change within their household, because it all starts at home. And now you bring it to the classroom. You're gonna step forward, you bring it to the classroom to help now that teachers can able to work with children, and now they could go back home and explain the way how they feel, which is such a beautiful thought. And
Mm,
it's amazing how we can really honor our intuition and bring it to life, because that is what you did. You bring your intuition to life. You saw a need in homes, and you decided, you know what? I can write a book to help people around the world, to help their children and families to live a better life. Congratulations, and thank you so
thank
much for
you.
being Paulette. And to the
Thank
audience,
you.
thank you so much as well. Joan? take the mic.
We didn't even want this to end. I think
I
we have to
know,
do
right?
part two. I think we have to do part two. Paulette, you're truly an
Okay.
amazing person. And we just want to give you your flowers because you're special, you're wonderful. And you have provided us, first of all, you've served us well. And thanks to Annie for making this happen.
Yes,
And
yes,
in what you have done, you've provided us with a great overview. You have embraced your creativity, which give a birthing of joy and
yes.
fun. And so that when you speak in this space and what you share tonight, it is heartfelt. We receive it 100-fold because you took us on a journey. You help us to visualize what it can be like and some of the steps that this can be taken, because one of the specific story you shared about is like moving in include our kids, help them to
Mm,
understand, have a discussion. Just don't make, because we might feel enthusiastic about it, moving, getting a new job, whatever it is that that next step is for us, but involve our children. So bring them along on the journey
Hmm.
so that they can feel and explain to them the advantages and the benefits that we'll be gaining. We Yes, they might lose their family. They're not losing anything per se, because we enhancing, we gaining more, because we're
mm,
starting a next chapter. The book is not ended. We're just enhancing with more chapters. And you spoke about your moral compass, because you let your moral compass guide you. And the woman that we are see sitting in front of us today did not let her past define her. What you did with your past, you repurpose that. And that is what you bring tonight and to share with us and help us to understand. Don't let your past define you,
True.
because you use your past, because that's part of your experience. That is part that shape you as a person here today. And you can be a strong woman, have your moral compass, and now you're bringing the world, you're lifting the world up. And then when you talk about going to the school and helping the kids to write out what is worrying them, that was so beautiful. As a great thought, because the kids worry, of course they do. They worry what is happening at home, but you give them an opportunity, you give them an opening that they are allowed to worry, but then they can share that. So there is so much value and so much profoundness that you share this evening with us, and help us all to understand. Yes, it starts with the kids. They are listening. They
they are.
are listening. So we have to be mindful when we're
Hmm.
having a conversation, because it can be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
It can be misinterpreted. And you also talk about our inner voice, our inner self, which is so important. So there is so much takeaway. You've given us a basket of takeaways tonight. You have given
Oh,
us,
bless
Paulette, a
you.
basket of takeaways tonight. We just want to thank you. I could go on saying so much, but we just want to thank you for saying yes. We thank Annie and all the listeners and the viewers and all the comments and everything tonight, because it has enriched us, and it has
Oh,
helped
thank
us to
you.
understand that we have so much. And every experience that we gain in this lifetime, we can use it for and we purpose it for the future. So thank you, and thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, thank you. It's been great fun. Although Annie will say you never gave them a chance to get a word in edgeways. Here's an inner voice. Annie, I'm gonna call my inner voice Annie.
Thank
And
you
it's
so much.
amazing.
No,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
It's
much,
been lovely.
Paulette, and to all the
Yeah,
viewers. Thank you so much
so
for
much
joining
fun.
us this evening. Your beautiful
Lisa,
comments. It's
yeah,
it's truly amazing when we could all come in a space and we can enrich that
yeah,
space.
hmm,
Paulette, you make it so much fun tonight.
yeah,
So much
yeah,
fun,
yeah.
so much fun. And we
Oh,
thank you
good.
so much for enriching the space with your presence. and helping us to understand, trust your intuition
Mm-hmm.
and know that you can turn things around, and just know to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Trust yourself. Trust that intuition that is telling you, if it don't if you're getting this gut feeling it's not right, trust that gut feeling.
Yeah.
Because many times we show up in places and we get this gut wrenching feeling. You really don't feel right. Trust your intuition,
Yeah.
trust yourself. Because when you trust yourself, you're trusting that inner moral compass. So continue to trust yourself. And as we said before, your inner board of directors. Trust your inner board of directors. You're free to sit and talk with your inner board of directors. You're free to do it
Definitely.
and have a conversation with them. Take the time out and have a conversation with your inner board of directors and see where it's going to take you. Have a wonderful evening, a wonderful morning, a wonderful day, wherever you are in the part of the world. Thank you for joining us, and continue to believe in yourself and trust yourself. And don't forget to subscribe to Soul Light and Body. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.